Governor J.B. Pritzker signing 150-plus bills into law on Friday. And what do they entail? We'll go through all of that here with Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY. Springfield's News and Talk. Several laws going into effect July 1st include the state budget, which has, $550 million for undocumented migrants' health care, but also going into effect July 1st on Saturday. You're paying more for gases and taxes. You're paying more for grocery taxes. Those are some things that increased as well. About 3.1 cents on July 1st for gas increase, and that's on top of the 3.1 cents that went into effect January 1st. But also the 0% grocery tax went up to 1%, so you're paying about a cent per dollar spent on groceries here in the state of Illinois. That's after an election year freeze on both of those taxes. And that expired July 1st. So Saturday, that goes into effect. The state budget goes into effect, and several other laws go into effect. But on Friday, Governor J.B. Pritzker signed 155 bills, and another one he signed, making 156 bills, deals with the undocumented migrants getting access to standard IDs and driver's licenses. So it no longer says this is not identification. And now we'll say federal limits apply. So it deals with whether or not it's real ID compliant. So that's one measure that he ultimately signed into law. But let's go through some of the others that Governor J.B. Pritzker signed into law. And if you follow me on Twitter, you can see that particular story laying out the 655 bills that the legislature passed on spring session before they wrapped up in late May. But of 655, there were 465 bills on the governor's desk. He signed 150 of them into law on Friday. So what did he sign? Well, he signed that House Bill 3882, and that's the undocumented migrants getting access to standard Illinois driver's licenses beginning January 1st. And he says the legislation is a significant step in eliminating a barrier to opportunity that many undocumented migrants face, and ultimately allows for the temporary visitor driver's license to no longer say not valid for identification, and instead will say federal limits apply. So there was some pushback on that. It was not a bipartisan measure. You had Republicans voting against it, and in particular, you had State Senator Chapin Rose saying there's no doubt when you're going to get more of what you encourage. He says that when you throw up a sign that says sanctuary city or sanctuary state, what do you think's going to happen? So obviously, there's some pushback on that particular bill. But not all the bills that were signed into law on Friday were partisan bills. You had a House Bill 3304 that extends the statute of limitations for prosecution of any fraudulent activity connected to COVID-19 programs to include the Paycheck Protection Program, COVID-19 Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, and the Unemployment Benefits Program. That bill passed unanimously. And you had, for instance, State Representative Dan Calkins saying everyone in the General Assembly must have had enough and wanted to get to the bottom of the amount of fraud. But some of the other bills that the governor signed, Senate Bill 1834, it defines a negligent minor to include any minor under the age of 18 years of age whose parent or other person responsible for the minor leaves the minor without supervision. So that's obviously a measure that the governor signed into law on Friday among 150 some odd bills that the governor approved. Moving on to other legislation, you have also beginning next year, the Illinois Department of Transportation is required to develop a mobile app to provide traffic updates with Senate Bill 1526. That's effective January 1st. As far as other legislation that the governor signed, more oversight and fees will be put on the timber buying industry with Senate Bill 1560. So fees and regulations increasing for the timber buying industry with Senate Bill 1560. Also beginning Beginning next year, House Bill 1581. It allows the Illinois Secretary of State to issue special registration plates for U.S. submarine veterans. Drivers will be able to get autism awareness decals for their license plates from the Illinois Department of Public Health starting next year with House Bill 42. Also next year, a person injured by an impaired minor can sue the person who supplied the minor drugs or alcohol with House Bill 1155. So yet another one of the 150 some odd bills that the governor signed. Effective immediately, House Bill 2091 allows for the Secretary of State to raise the minimum age an individual must be to be eligible for a driving test. This is after you've got some studies that are going to be done by the Illinois Secretary of State's office. Also next year, House Bill 2582 removes duplicative testing requirements for motorcycle drivers under the age of 18. Apparently, if somebody under the age of 18 wants to get a driver's license for their motorcycle, they had to take a couple of tests. This reduces that. So that's effective next year. 60 days from Friday, House Bill 2220 clarifies when hotels can refuse service to somebody. Now, the bill itself, it spells out that you can't refuse service to somebody if there's say a tornado warning or something like that. You can't kick somebody out of a hotel if there's, facing severe weather. But the bill's considered by the American Hotel and Lodging Association as the Be Nice bill, saying that sometimes guests can get out of hand and hotel employees should not have to put up with that. So interesting bill that passed and the governor signed, House Bill 2220. Beginning January 1st, House Bill 2562 sets heating and cooling standards for buildings that house people 55 years and older. Also in the new year, House Bill 3559 requires schools to establish a plan for local law enforcement to rapidly enter a school building during an emergency. That's just a sampling of some of the bills. All right. If you look at my most recent postings on Twitter, you can see the news story, and you can actually go and check out the full list of bills, which is 37 pages long, 155 bills. Spelling out what the governor's office says the bills do and their effective dates. And you could just sit there and scroll and scroll and scroll as to all of these bills that the governor signed on Friday. A lot of legislation, and some of it goes into effect immediately. Other goes into effect January 1st. Others go into effect, a variety of different dates. October 1st transfers the responsibility of the Illinois Medicaid Fraud Control Unit from the Illinois State Police to the Office of the Illinois Attorney General. You've got others that, 60 days from, we talked about House Bill 2022 or 2220, which clarifies when hotels can refuse service. So you can go through and find all of these bills that the governor signed on Friday. So a lot of legislation passed during the spring session, still about 300 bills on the governor's desk at this point. So he's going to have even more bill signing ceremonies, I would imagine, and a whole bunch of bill dump news releases where he signs dozens and dozens and dozens of bills. But on Friday, the 150 bills Governor J.B. Pritzker signed into law. And if you need a review of those, you can either read them all yourself, or you can see my most recent reporting at thecentersquare.com. Pritzker signs more than 150 bills into law. That's a lot of legislation.